Please pray with me. Most humble Jesus, give us a share of your humility. Take from our hearts everything that displeases you. Convert it totally to you, so that we may no longer will or desire anything other than that what you will. Amen. Please be seated. Oh, the changes this building has seen since 1866. From coal-stoked furnaces, oil lamps, then gas, then electric lights, and natural gas furnaces, and finally, air conditioning. God bless it, right? But that's not all the kinds of changes this building has seen. Hand-pumped organs, can you imagine? An organ there, and behind, in what we refer to as our side chapel, the columbarium room, people pumping with their hand and their feet organs while an organist played right there. Then we move on to our impressive pipe organ installed under Debbie's tenure up there in the loft. So beautiful and so wonderful this sounds and how it lifts us in our worship. Pianos of all kinds have been here, all of them uprights. And today we have this glorious baby grand piano with its rich sound to lift us up in our worship time. The altar itself has been moved. Did you realize that? For decades and decades, as most altars in Episcopal churches, it was against the wall over there where we now sit. And during the Eucharist service, the priest's back was to the congregation as he, and it was always a he in those days, celebrated the Eucharist. And it too was pulled out, and the priest was turned to face the congregation, to be a part of the people that they were leading in worship. And what a wonderful message that was being sent to everyone here. And oh, our pulpit. My goodness. Constructed in 1940 for the first time. Prior to that, there was no pulpit in this room. The ministers preached from right there where the altar stands now, on the floor, standing before everyone. 11 rectors, 2 interims, one of them a former assistant, a number of bishops, and countless supply priests who have covered for the rectors when they have been away due to illness or vacation, have stood in this pulpit that is nearly 60 years old. I see the marks they have left on it. The hand-worn lighter spots along the edges of this pulpit, where myself and so many others have grabbed it and held on tight for the ride that's about to come. But also the 2 footprint spots at the bottom that have been worn with care as ministers have stood here. They have all left their mark, both figuratively and literally, on this pulpit. Now, much of my information about this pulpit and about this church comes from our historian, Ivy Tulin, who has given me a wealth of information and photographs to look at from what we might consider ancient times. This pulpit has been in multiple locations since 1940. There's a 1954 picture that very clearly shows the pulpit right there, just a few feet from this spot now. Many of you will remember when it was at one point down on the floor, lower level down there, before it was moved up to where the baby grand is now. the parishioners who made this pulpit in 1940 made it sturdy, made it solid, gave it all it needed to preach the word from. And they gave it one other wonderful quality. They gave it mobility. It was not firmly attached to any place in the church. So, in their wiseness, they knew somehow, in the decades to come, there would be changes. And this beautiful pulpit would be needed to move to different areas. But one thing has stayed constant. From this pulpit, the gospel has been proclaimed. That is eternal. So no matter where it stands, that is its purpose, to proclaim the good word of Jesus Christ. And today's gospel, well, just like all the others, it gives us an opportunity to learn a little bit more about what Christ would have us do as his disciples. And these disciples, oh my goodness, James and John, they are oh so human, aren't they? Jockeying for position and power and leadership and honor. I don't think that Jesus played favorites, but there is little doubt that the two brothers discussed today, James and John, along with Peter, formed a kind of inner circle of the 12 disciples. They are present at crucial moments when the other disciples are not. This isn't explained, but perhaps he knew that they had a few extra gifts in some way. It had to be for a reason. It's not like they had less responsibilities in the world than the other disciples, so they just had more time to hang out with him. Or that somehow they had an idea that the others didn't have. We don't know what it was, but for whatever reason, indeed, they are around Jesus more often. But this familiarity did not engender, ironically, a better understanding of Jesus' teaching, as shown in this gospel reading. They are still confused, thinking that Jesus would establish some kind of earthly kingdom that would free Israel from Rome's horrible occupation. They thought kingdoms and palaces and an earthly rule were somehow in their future. And because of that misunderstanding, look at what John and James ask for. To be in the ultimate seats of power, to be Christ's right hand and left hand, so to speak. And isn't this so like our world today? So many people looking for what's in it for them. Jesus is trying to tell them that they have no idea of what they are asking for. His kingdom is not about palaces or power or military rule. Can't you just see Jesus' face? Can you imagine his reaction, shaking his head and telling them that they don't have any idea what they are asking for? He asked, "Are you able to drink from the cup that I drink?" And so quickly they respond that they are able. Oh, so quick and oh, so cocky, right? It's so easy and human to respond like this to a bold challenge, almost childlike in its boldness. I see people exclaiming over the internet or TV that they will suffer anything for Christ, often wrapped up in some platitude that gets 75 likes on their Facebook post. Yet so many of us complain over the most minor of irritations. The timing isn't good for me right now, they might say. We've never done it that way before. Or my personal favorite, it's someone else's turn to do that. if we buy into this Jesus thing, then we must also be willing to suffer the irritations that come with serving him and others. And just what does that mean? It means actively seeking discernment in what God needs you to do in his kingdom. It means praying and asking God to lead you in this service. It means getting out of your comfort zone and maybe, just maybe, getting your hands a little dirty in whatever way God is calling you to do. John and James wanted the highest position in Jesus' kingdom, but Jesus told them that true greatness comes in serving others. Oh, so true. You know that whole, the first shall be last and the last shall be first thing? We discussed it just last week. Well, James and John and us are getting another dose of that. He says of himself, actually, in verse 45 today, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. All of this does indeed remind me of this pulpit I stand in now. This pulpit was not designed to be something sacrosanct. This pulpit was created to be of service, helping to amplify the word preached from it. Its very mobility, folks, is an asset. It was indeed created to serve, as were the disciples, as were we. Amen.